Okay, perfect. So the first thing that we're going to start to work on is the soup. So the first thing that we're going to want to do for the soup is we're going to want to peel our butternut squash. So I have one that's about like 2 pounds, I want to say. So the first thing that we want to do is just peel that skin off of all of the squash. So that's pretty easy. So I'm just going to take my peeler. I like to start in the middle and then kind of go all the way to the end. And then I usually rotate it afterwards. And then with the butternut squash, you can see that as you start to peel, there's these like green lines on there. I usually just like to peel enough so that those go away. So that was about like 3 passes and then it's gone. So we'll do that around the whole squash. So then once I get in there, all I see is the nice bright orange. That's perfect. And for anyone who's just joining us, so far we've just started peeling our squash. For the soup recipe. And now that I have this side pretty much fully peeled, just see if I can get that end a little bit. All I'm gonna do is just flip it over and then hold it from this side and then get this end of the squash as well. The thicker part is usually a little bit harder to peel. It might get stuck at times, but that's all right. If it gets stuck, you can always just lift it up and then keep going from the same spot. And usually that'll get it taken care of. The bottom, I'll just go around the outside. Just trying to get those last little green lines away. Right. And then once you're done with that, you can just discard all of those peels that you have. I'm gonna go through mine out quick. And then once everyone's got their butternut squash peeled, just give me a thumbs up and we'll keep going on to the next step. I see Josh, she's done already. I see Kristen's done. Caitlin, I see you. Glamary, I see you. Monica, Stephen and Ella look like they're going a little bit, so we'll keep going. Okay, perfect. So then the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to cut this in half. So I think mine's a little bit on the bigger side. So what I'm going to do is cut it in half down the middle first. So I'm going to take it like right in here and just go right down the middle. You might want to get some help for that just because these are a little bit denser to cut through. So I just cut my squash down the middle like that. So I'm going to work with one piece first. And I'm just gonna cut the end off this piece here. That's good. And then once you get to this piece, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You can cut the end off first. Just remember, you want to be really careful. And then I'm going to stick it up on this so that the really big side is down on the bottom of the table or the cutting board. That's going to give us a little more stability. And I'm going to take the knife and I'm going to carefully press down into the squash and cut that in half like that. So now we see the inside that has all the seeds just like that. So once you have that part of your squash cut in half and you see the insides, just give me a thumbs up and then we'll keep going on to break this down. I see some already. Awesome. All right, does anyone need any more time to get to that point? Or are we all doing okay? Okay, so then the next thing you want to do is you want to take out all those seeds and all that inside right over there. So you can just take any spoon. I'm using a little bit of a bigger one just so that you can get more out at once. And you're just going to dig the spoon into this little hole. And all the seeds should come out. So it's just from that one spot. You don't want to take anything else out around the other parts of the squash. You just want to get all those seeds out. So if you just drag and scoop, then they all come out just like that. So you'll be left with a little hole in there. So we're just going to do that on both sides. So I'm just kind of using the end of my spoon to dig in. And then scoop. And then you just kind of get whatever's remaining after that. Scrape that out. And then it's all clean, just like that. All right, so I'm just going to quickly get rid of those insides and the ends that we cut off as well. And then we can start cutting this into cubes. All right, does everyone have all of their insides scooped out of the squash? Or does anyone need more time? If you do, that's totally fine.
I assume we're doing the entire squash, both halves we're scooping
Yes,
out.
we are.
Okay, just checking. Thanks.
Of course. Okay, looks like everyone's pretty much good. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to work with 1/2 at a time. So we're just going to start slicing into, I want to say like 1/2-inch slices, like about this thick. And we're just going to make some slices. We're going to go down the whole squash. You want to make sure that when you're slicing, you're protecting your fingers. And it's okay if they're not all completely even because it's going to get blended at the end anyway. So then once you have your slices from each part, you're just going to cut down the middle so you get kind of like a stick shape. So I have this piece that I cut into 2 sticks, and then we'll just go cubes, just like that. And then we can put those in a separate bowl. So we're just going to do that for our whole squash for all 4 halves that we have. Just down the middle in cubes. And then once you get to the pieces that are shaped like this, with a part that's scooped out, that way you can pretty much just go around and make cubes like that. And add those to your bowl as well. So we're just gonna make cubes through our whole squash. Like I said, they don't have to be perfectly even, but as long as everything's around the same size, they'll cook at the same rate. So that's the only thing that matters, since we will be blending it. And then when I get to these half moon shaped pieces, I'll just go around and make those cubes. This one is kind of like a mix. So on this one, I am going to cut in half like we did with the full pieces and then make those cubes. Then you're just going to do the same thing for all the other squash halves. So I'm going to make my slices first. Once I have all my slices, then I'm going to make the cubes. This is a little chop heavy, but after this, we only have to cut an onion and then we're pretty much done. We'll have to cut an apple for the grilled cheese too, but that'll be pretty simple. Now I have the skinny part of my squash left. Everyone's doing a really good job chopping. All right, so I'm gonna just keep doing the same thing, cut in half. And then those cubes. Right, I'm down to my last squash half. Some of these pieces that are a little bit on the smaller side, I'm just cubing instead of cutting them down the middle first, just so that they're all the same size. All right. So once everyone is done cutting up their squash, just give me another thumbs up and we'll move on to the onion. I see some people are done already. If you're still taking some more time to chop, take as much time as you need. Does anyone need any more time to cut the butternut squash? All right, looks like we are all good.
Are you
So
still
then-
doing the onion?
What was that?
Are you still doing the onion? I thought you said at the beginning you were not gonna do that.
That's for the grilled cheese. We're gonna do the
Okay,
onion for
gotcha.
the soup, but not for the grilled cheese.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now for this, we are just going to take one medium-sized onion. I'm using two separate open ones that I have. And we're just gonna wanna cut these into about the same size that we cut our squash pieces into. So I'm pretty much gonna do the same thing that we just did. So I'm just gonna make some slices like that down the onion. And then once I have those slices, I'm gonna take one, you'll get some pieces that fall out, that's all right. Down the middle, and then cubes just like that. So then once you actually pull apart the layers, you have pieces that are like about this size. And then I'm just gonna put those in another bowl. So again, I'm just gonna take my slice, go down the middle, and then make those cubes, which ends up in those nice sized pieces of onion. And then similar to the squash, if you have a piece of onion that looks like a rainbow like this, you can just go around and make those cuts like that, so you still get the same size. That one piece off.
We're feeling very sad cutting the onion. It brings a tear to our eye.
Oh yeah, it gets me every time. I feel it coming now.
Yeah, poor onion.
All right, so then once you guys also have your onion all cut up, Give me another thumbs up and then we can get started cooking this soup. I see a bunch already. Awesome job, everyone. Apple that we'll have to do shortly. All right, I'm just gonna turn you guys around this way so you can see my stove. All right, everyone looks to be pretty good, right? We're ready to start cooking? All right, awesome. So we're gonna take our pot. We're gonna turn the heat on to medium. And we're gonna wanna cut and add to the pot 2 tablespoons of butter. So I'm just gonna add that right in. And then we're just gonna wait for that to heat up a little bit before we add anything else. I'm just waiting for my pan to get a little warmer. All right, so once you have your everyone has their butter added in. Okay, perfect. So then we're gonna add our onion in first with that butter. And we're gonna cook those down until they get a little bit soft. So we're gonna wanna keep them. Let me add the recipe into the chat just so that everyone still has it. All right, and this is for anyone who doesn't have the recipe on them right this second, I'm about to add it. We just added 1 medium onion chopped into the pan with 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm just taking a spoon and stirring them a little bit. So mine are starting to bubble a little bit with that butter. We want to just move them every once in a while so nothing burns in the pan. For some reason, it's not letting me add the documents into the chat, but the recipe will always be sent out again after class, and I'm going to announce the amounts of everything as we add them too. So we'll still know everything that we're adding. So now you can see like some of the onions are starting to get soft. They're starting to get a little bit translucent, so you can see through them a little bit. That's exactly what we want them to do. We're gonna just keep moving those around a little bit. And now while we're waiting for the onions to cook down a little bit, we're gonna wanna measure out 6 cups of chicken stock. I'm just taking my big liquid measuring cup right here. I'm gonna have to use 2 different ones because this one's 4 cups. So I'm gonna measure 4 cups into this one.
What did you say?
We're gonna measure 6 cups of chicken stock. Or broth, whatever you have. If you get them about this size, it's usually 1.5 of those. So if that one filled to 4 cups. I'm gonna get my 2-cup measuring cup as well and fill that one up. Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and stir my onions again. Now they're really starting to change color. So that's exactly what we're looking for. Give those 1 more minute before we add everything else. But then we should be good to go. Are everyone's onions looking good too? They're starting to get soft. Awesome.
How many cups of the stock do we get?
6 cups.
6 cups, okay,
Yep,
thank you.
you're welcome. All right, I'm gonna give this last stir. And then we can go ahead. We're gonna add that 6 cups of stock that we just measured out, and we're gonna add in all our squash that we cut. So I'm gonna carefully pour the squash in here. And then I'm gonna add in all of that stock as well. Might have to transfer to a bigger pan. I think I might. That's a little full. I'm just putting everything into a bigger pan so it all fits. I didn't judge that very well. Okay, perfect. So now I'm gonna add those last 2 cups of stock. And we're gonna leave this on the medium heat. We're gonna want it to come to a simmer, so that's those light bubbles that we were talking about previously. We don't want the big heavy bubbles, that's boil. We want it to have the nice little bubbles, so then that way it cooks evenly the whole time. I'm just gonna give this a little stir. I'm gonna put the heat up a little bit just so that I can help bring it to a simmer, and then I'll lower it afterwards.
Excuse me, do we have salt and pepper in yet?
We did not. Once it comes up to a simmer, we're gonna add that in. And then you can always add in a little bit more after you blend too. All right, so once everyone has everything in your pot and we're gonna let it start to simmer, give me another thumbs up, and then we're gonna switch gears for a little bit and work on our grilled cheese while our soup cooks. It looks like everyone's pretty much good. So I'm gonna turn us back around again. So now we're gonna work towards the grilled cheese while we let that squash cook. And what we're gonna wanna do here too, right before we start, is we're gonna wanna set a timer for 15 minutes, because then once that timer goes off, we're gonna check on our soup and see how that squash is cooking. So I'm gonna set a timer right now first. All right. And now for anyone who wasn't here in the beginning, I had mentioned we're gonna alter this grilled cheese recipe a little bit just for the sake of time. So we're not gonna be doing the caramelized onions in there. So just bear with me. I'm gonna guide us through this whole thing and let us know what steps we're referring to, because we're gonna be skipping around a little bit. So right now we're gonna go ahead to step number 4, and we're going to want to grate our cheese. If you're using pre-grated cheese, that's also totally fine. I'm gonna be doing that today just because I have some that it's gonna go bad that I want to use. But I am going to show everyone. This is what I usually use. This is a box grater. So if you have one of these that you're using, you're probably going to want to use this bigger side here, because we don't want the cheese shreds to be too small. And I'm just going to show with this thing of butter what you would want to do. So usually when you use a box grater like this, you have it sitting on top of your cutting board. And then you have a block of cheese like this. So you want to hold it in your hand as if you're holding like a baseball or something. And you're going to take it, you're going to hold it right side up just like this. And then you want to angle it a little bit towards the box grater. And then you want to make sure you're using not too much pressure, but just the right amount. You don't want to push it all the way in, and you don't want to have no pressure. But then you go against, you go down at that angle to get those cheese shreds that you want to get. And remember, you don't want to push all the way in and you don't want to have no pressure at all. You want to lightly push and then push down and you'll get the cheese that comes out of the bottom. Or if you're using a hand grater like this, you kind of do the same thing, except it's holding it like this instead of the box like this. So you would hold the cheese, the box the same way, and you would just go across. This one, you don't have to do it at an angle. You can do it right side up and go like that if you want. And then you can do it over a bowl so it falls into the bowl, but you can also do it at an angle. The angle is really important for the box grater. And if you are using the pre-shredded cheese, which again is totally fine, you're just gonna wanna measure out 1.5 cups of the cheddar and 1.5 cups of the fontina. That is also to make 4 grilled cheeses. So if you only want to make 1 right now, I would say you could measure out like 1/3 of a cup of each, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Let's get my 1/3 cup. That's pretty much just, it's based on how cheesy you want it. So if you want it really, really cheesy, you can always add more, or you can always add less. If anyone has a dairy allergy, you can always substitute for dairy-free cheese as well. So I'm just measuring 1/3 cup of each right now. Again, it doesn't have to be completely perfect. I see some people using a box grater. That's awesome. And the other thing you could do too is you can always change what cheese is in here. If there's certain cheese that you like better, you can always just swap that out instead. All right, so I got the 2 kinds of cheese in there. I'm just gonna mix them together so they're evenly incorporated. Once everyone has their cheese shredded and measured, you can do that too, because then that way they'll go on the grilled cheeses evenly. All right. And for anyone who is shredding, take your time. Once everyone has their cheese shredded and measured, just give me a thumbs up and then we'll keep going. But again, take as much time as you need. I see some people are done already. For anyone who is done, you can go ahead and give that squash a stir if you want, just to make sure everything's going all good. Mine's starting to get those nice small bubbles. I'll show you guys. That's exactly what we want. Those are like the small bubbles that are just going to cook those squash and onions nice and gently, which is exactly what we want. Does anyone need any more time to shred cheese, or are we all good? Okay, perfect. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut some slices of our apple. I am using a Honey Crisp, but again, you can use whichever one that you would like, whichever is your favorite. Mine is kind of pre-cut already a little bit. So what you wanna do is you wanna make sure you get at first a nice flat side like this so you can lay it down. So I have mine on the flat side like that, and you just want to make some nice thinner slices. They don't have to be perfect. but something like this. And then we're gonna just lay those on the grilled cheese. So I'm just going down. That was a little too thin. And then once, if you get close to the core, you can just turn it over. And I'll just cut a bigger piece just to get that side exposed. And I'll keep cutting some thin slices. Just like that. All right. You could cut as many as you need for however many grilled cheeses that everyone's making, or as many apples as you want on it. My soup's starting to get some bigger bubbles, so I'm turning the heat down a little bit, just so that it's not too cooking too fast. I see your guys' question. I think that the apple step is not in there by accident, so I just slid that in there really quick, so we're not on a number. But after this, we'll go to a separate number. And then once everyone has their apple sliced up, just give me another thumbs up and we will keep on going. All right, looks like everyone's doing good.
Could you show how thick the slices are of your apple?
Yeah. So I made them, I don't know how thick it would be, but this is kind of like how thick or thin I made them. I mean, you can do it as thick or as thin as you want, but I kind of just went as close to the edge as I could get. You don't want to make them too thin, so that like this, I had this one that came out and that was kind of like paper thin. That's too thin. And then for this, it's easier just kind of to go back and forth to get those thin slices. Just like that. I'm having an apple snack if anyone else wants one.
Yeah, I just love having apples.
You love apples?
Yep.
That's the best part. You can have them as a snack while you're cooking. Delicious. Okay, does anyone need any more time to cut their apples, or are we all set? All right, looks like everyone is pretty good. Okay, and then are people using the prosciutto or are we omitting it? Give me a thumbs up if you're using it. Okay, so some people are, some people aren't. So I will go over that. So now we're going to go all the way down to step number 20. So that is where we're going to cook the prosciutto. And if you're not using this, you can just hang on tight for a sec. I'm not going to be using it either, but just to go over what you want to do. You're going to take out your pan that we're going to use to cook the grilled cheese. So everyone can do that at least. You want to get out the pan that you're going to use. I'm using this pan, that way I can do, should be a little bit. I'm going to do one sandwich, so that should fit that in there. For the prosciutto, since it's a little bit, it's fattier, you're not going to want to add, you don't have to add anything to the pan itself so that it doesn't stick, but we're just going to want to turn our pans onto medium heat. And then that way they're heated up for the grilled cheese as well. And then I'm just going to give the squash and the onions a stir as well. And for anyone who is using the prosciutto, you're pretty much gonna cook it the same way that you would cook bacon in a pan. It's just gonna cook much quicker since it's very thin. So you'll lay them in the pan and then you'll see they'll start to bubble the way that bacon would. You'll give them a nice flip, and then after another minute or so, they should be good. And then you can just take those out of the pan, and then we'll add them to the grilled cheese before we start cooking those all together. So once the people who are using the prosciutto have their prosciutto in the pan, then we'll go on to the next step after that. That way that everyone's still on the same page. I don't want anyone to get stuck behind.
Sorry, can you repeat please about the prosciutto? We just took it out of the bag. What do we do?
Okay, so you're gonna want to turn your heat on to you're gonna get a separate pan. This is the pan that we're gonna use to cook the grilled cheese in as well. You're gonna want to put the stove to medium heat. And then the same way that you would cook bacon in a pan, you're just gonna kind of lay the slices of prosciutto in the pan. Should be able to finish cooking in like 1 to 2 minutes per side because they're so thin, so it'll be really quick. You just want it to get a little crispy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So then once you guys have that in the pan and that's working, just let me know for whoever else is using it too. I see some thumbs up already. I see some people working on it. That's great. And then we can prepare our bread once everyone is ready. And then my squash is starting to get a little soft. That's good. My timer has about 1 minute left. So we'll probably let this cook until we're done cooking our grilled cheese, and then we can go ahead and blend that up. I see some people flipping the prosciutto already. That's awesome. My timer for the soup went off. So if everyone else's probably should around this time too. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn my heat down to low because we don't want it to get too mushy, but I don't want to take it off just yet. So I'm putting my heat for the soup down to low. That way it still continues to cook a little bit, but very slowly as we're finishing up these grilled cheeses before we start to blend that later on. And how are my prosciutto people doing? Is everything going all right? Once you guys are all set, just let me know.
We are y'all set.
You're all set? Okay, great. Does anyone else who's cooking the prosciutto need any more time? If you do, that's totally fine. Just let me know. I see thumbs up. Thumbs up all around. Okay, great. So now we're gonna get started preparing our grilled cheeses to cook. So we're gonna wanna take our bread slices. Again, depending on how many you make, that's gonna be, you're gonna wanna take out 2 slices per grilled cheese that you wanna make. I'm gonna get 2 slices of bread here. And I'm gonna keep them together right now for a second, just so that we know which sides are the outside. So if this is my grilled cheese here, I have 1 outside on the top and 1 outside on the bottom. So depending on what you prefer, we're gonna wanna spread either mayonnaise or olive oil over the top. So if you're doing mayonnaise, you probably want to use a knife to spread. And then if you're doing olive oil, you can probably use a brush or just kind of drizzle it on the top. I'm gonna do mayo. So it's gonna be about 2 tablespoons, but I'm just gonna squeeze it over the top like this. And then spread it. And you just want to make sure that kind of all of it's covered, because this is what's going to help the bread get nice and crispy in the pan. So now like I have my whole one side covered here. So now I have it like this. So I'm just going to flip it over. So I know this is my other outside piece. And I'm going to do the same thing there. I'm just going to squeeze it on top and then use a knife and spread it out. So that way all my sides are covered. Just like that. All right. And then once everyone has both of their bread pieces covered, just give me another thumbs up and we'll keep adding to the inside now. I see a bunch of thumbs up. Awesome. All right, looks like everyone's good. So now we're gonna take our 2 pieces of bread and we're gonna open them up. So now we have both outsides touching the cutting board. And then based on however you want to do it, we're going to layer the cheese, the apple slices, and the prosciutto if you're using it. So I'm just going to take a nice handful of my cheese here. I'm going to sprinkle it across one side. I'm going to sprinkle it across the other 2. And then I'm going to take my apple slices and put them in the middle. So it's kind of going to be like the cheese surrounding the apple. And I'm doing 5 slices of apple across my bread. Take a little more cheese so this is covered. And then you can layer the prosciutto on top of that. You can layer it on, you can put it before the cheese, whatever order you want it to be in. So once you have everything, you're going to want to flip one side onto the other. Some of the cheese is probably going to spill. That's okay. So now we have our assembled grilled cheeses. And then once everyone is ready with that, we can go ahead and start cooking them. So just give me one more thumbs up when everyone is all set. I see some already. Great job. We're almost there. It's almost time to eat. These are looking really good. And just a reminder too that we have our pan on the oven over medium heat, just so that we're ready to throw the grilled cheese on there once we're all set.
Did we add onion yet for the grilled cheese?
So the onion is what we ended up skipping for this recipe, just because
Okay.
it would have been too much time to cook them down.
Okay, thank you.
But if you guys ever make it in the future, you can always add them in there.
we add it directly in the sandwich?
What was that?
Do we add it into the sandwich, the onion?
Yes, if you ever make it in the future, you can always cook down the onions. You can follow the recipe
Okay,
to the T. We just skipped over that part.
Okay,
And then
okay.
if you do end up using them, you would just add them on there.
thanks. We love onions.
You're welcome. All right, looks like we got some people assembling. Awesome. How's everyone doing? Does anyone need any more time? All right, a few minutes? Okay, take your time. Just giving the soup another stir.
When are we adding the spices?
So the most of the spices were going to go into the onions, but the one spice that we are still going to be using is those sage leaves at the end. But
Okay.
the chopped ones, those were all going into the onions. So for those we're not using, but we will still use the sage at the end of cooking the grilled cheese.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. How's everyone looking? Are we all set? All right. So now we can take our sandwiches and add them into our pans. Gonna grab mine. You want to make sure you add them carefully because they are hot. And we're gonna do probably about 3 to 5 minutes aside, just so that we want to make sure they get nice golden brown. And then we can always check. You want to have a spatula handy so you can always kind of lift up your sandwich to see how it's doing. You can kind of press it down a little bit too. Some cheese will probably fall out and melt onto the sides and onto the pan. That's okay. You can kind of see too with and you can see the starting them out on the inside. So that's how we know that it's almost ready to flip. I'm gonna try and look at it and see. All right, mine looks pretty good. Just be careful. All right, there. So we got the nice golden brown outside. I'm gonna press it down a little bit. The key to a grilled cheese staying together becomes that glue to keep the sandwich together. So it's got that nice crispy outside, which is exactly what we want. Now that my sandwich, we've got a little bit of time left on this one side. What we're gonna wanna do is add a little pat of butter, about half a tablespoon. So I pushed my sandwich over to one side here. And in that empty side, I'm gonna add that little bit of butter. I'm gonna let that melt down really quick, and then we're gonna take those 2 sage leaves and kind of let them get nice and crispy in that butter. They'll cook up pretty quick. You can see they're kind of starting to shrivel up a little bit and get some nice and brown. So that's just gonna give us some crispy sage leaves there that we can put on top of our sandwich. I'm just gonna stir them in that butter a little bit. Flip my sandwich over one more time just to make sure both sides are all good and crispy. And you can tell the sage leaves are done once they start bubbling a little. So I heard the second I added them to the pan, they got all bubbly and they started to make a lot of noise. Now there's not as much noise, so I know that they're pretty much done. So I'm just gonna take those and place them right on top of my grilled cheese, just like that. And then I think my grilled cheese is pretty toasted up, so I'm just gonna turn that heat off and transfer that to a plate. So it looks just like that. I'm gonna stick that over to the side for a sec. And then once everyone has their grilled cheese off the heat, just give me another thumbs up and then we will finish up our soup. I see a few. Awesome, awesome. Great job, everyone. We are almost there. Does anyone need more time for their grilled cheese or are we all good?
We are good.
Perfect. All right, so if everyone's all set, that we can start blending our soup. So there's two options that you have here. You can either blend it right in the pot with an immersion blender, which is this stick kind of blender, or you can carefully pour it into a regular blender and blend it that way. This is the only blender I have, so I will be using this. So you just want to be careful too, because it might splash up at you a little bit. I'm going to start it. Mine has two settings. It has low and high, so I'm always going to start it on low. And I kind of just do little pulses at first. So you just stick it right in, and you can just pulse as it moves around, just to get some stuff starting to break up. And then you can kind of hold the button down and move it around like this. Now that I have some pieces smaller, I'm going to move up to high, and I'm going to do it on high now. And as you blend, you'll see the liquid starts to get thicker. So that's that squash and the onions breaking down into a puree almost. I'm going to give this a little check and see how I'm doing. If there's any chunks in there still. All right, it's looking pretty smooth. I still got a few chunks, so I'm going to do this one more time, and then it should be all good. Good, one more pass. All right, that looks pretty good to me. So once it's completely smooth like that, you know that it's all ready. And it has that thicker texture. It's not super thick, but it definitely is thicker than just the stock was. Does anyone have any questions about blending their soup, or is everyone doing okay? Everyone looks pretty good. All right.
Are we seasoning the soup now?
Yes. So we're going to do salt and pepper, and we're going to do a little bit of nutmeg. All right. So for salt and pepper, pretty much to taste. So I always start off with a little bit. And you
What
can
about the
always add
salt
more.
and pepper?
No, apple cider.
What was your question, Joshi?
Apple cider.
What about the apple cider?
So the apple cider was gonna be used to cook the onions for the grilled cheese. So we didn't end up using that since we didn't cook the onions, but if you ever make that again, the grilled cheese again, and you wanna cook the onions and add those to it, you add the apple cider to that. So I'm just gonna add about like a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of pepper and then taste it and go from there. And then once you add that stuff in, you just want to make sure you stir it up and then you taste it. And then if you need more salt or pepper, you can always add more in. Okay, so let me just try that out. And then when you taste it, make sure you blow on it because it's very, very hot still. All right, that was the perfect amount of salt and pepper for me. And then to also taste, I'm gonna do a little nutmeg. So I'm just gonna take a little pinch because nutmeg is pretty strong and add that in there. And then do the same thing. You also don't have to add the nutmeg if you don't want to. It'll just give it a little bit of like a nutty fall flavor. Right, so then I'm gonna give that just another taste. All right, that's pretty good. So once you have your soup seasoned to how you like it, then that is all ready. A great thing about this soup is if you want to have it on Thanksgiving, it'll save in the fridge really well up until then because it's about what, 4 to 5 days away now. So if you want to save it for then, you can do that. It'll also save in the freezer really well, probably about up to a month. So you can always freeze it and then reheat it on the stove top. And that'll go really well like that. Or you have it today, whatever you guys want. And then before we head off, I would love to take a picture. As you guys know, I love to take a picture at the end. So if you want to either hold up your grilled cheese or a bowl of soup, or if you want to try and do both, go for it. But if you guys want to just get that ready. For the nutmeg, I just added a little pinch and then you go from there because it is a little bit powerful. So I just did a teeny pinch and that was perfect for me. I'm gonna hold up my grilled cheese because it's very pretty. And then once everyone is ready, I'll go ahead and take that picture. Just gonna wait for everyone to have it in their hand. All right, everyone good? Okay, let me get this set up.
Sure. Yeah, hold on. Put your shirt on. Oh, sorry.
Mama.
Okay, go then.
All right, I'm gonna count down when we're
I
all
had-
good.
1 second.
Yeah.
Go, that's it.
Well, wait.
Shh.
Don't
No, it's okay.
tell me.
Just
Good blender.
1 second.
No worries, let me know when you're ready.
Put this back.
It's
It's
wet.
okay, just come. I'm sorry, I use the immersion, I use the regular blender and press the blend and the hot soup came out and
Oh
went all over
no,
us. So my son, I had to do first aid and
it's happened to all of us, don't
he has
worry.
got burned in the back.
Oh no.
Come put it back. Come quick.
My back got
Burned.
burned.
Yeah, okay, put your shirt back. You cannot come here without a shirt. Hold this.
All right, ready, everyone? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Thank you guys so much for coming today. I hope everyone has a really happy Thanksgiving next week. We have our next class, our last class of the year in 2 weeks on December. That make sure you sign up. It'll have the recipe for this again if everyone doesn't have it. But other than that, if there's no questions, thank you again. Happy Thanksgiving, and I will see all of you again really soon.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. We really appreciate your time.
Bye.
Thank you.